3, State Highway 99, north of GPS 401015, south of Seminole, Oklahoma. Okay, I'm going to pick up and kind of give a panoramic perspective of this because we've moved some on downstream, or in this case north of where we had been before. I'll step out in the median to try to show this. Okay, I'm zooming back up there towards the SPS3 sites that we've marked. The hill back there, and then coming on down the hill is where we had our sections on down towards the end before we got into that sag vertical curve was where we had the last of our previous SPS3 sections, and then due to the utility situations and so on in that sag, and then between there and here, we picked up down here with the remainder of the SPS3s. Zoom back out. We're going around clockwise. See, divided highway. Looking back on the northbound lanes, you can see we're coming up into a right curve, and you can see getting into the town of Seminole up there. Way back, as I've done before, to show the distresses in this section. Something that is more easy to see in this direction. You can see some bleeding there in the inside wheel path. I'm noting a little over 100 square feet of it, and almost all of it is concentrated down here between 3+40 and 4. It's particularly bad around 3+80. Yeah, another little spot down there between Station 4 and Station 5 that you can see on up ahead. Where we have our greatest variation in our fill height here. We go from slightly more than at grade on up to what's probably around up to maybe a 12 to 15 foot fill in here. But it couldn't be avoided, and I don't think it may not be responsible for some of the distresses we've seen, and again at night. It'll be interesting to look at the results of the falling weight data and compare that with the distresses observed. We're now working our way up. Like I said, you can't really see that bleeding working from this direction, only where it's most severe. Our predominant distress here is medium severity longitudinal cracking. However, I am characterizing what we see right up here as medium severity alligator cracking. It has progressed beyond the point I feel that it should be noted as longitudinal cracking, with some random cracking associated to the point where we need to note it as alligator cracking here in the inside wheel path. I've got it as medium severity. Most of the pieces are still together. There's some slight spalling, and the cracks tend to be more than a 1/4 inch wide. Picks up again here just up from Station 4. Working on up. This longitudinal cracking here, medium severity, is almost in the middle of the lane. Get up here and we've got ourselves a medium severity transverse crack, along with some high severity longitudinal cracking in here. And right there. This is going to be an interesting section to monitor the performance of the chip seal, because with that bleeding back there, that's not the best sort of distress you would like to be working a chip seal coat on. Now this is interesting here. It looks like we've had a some gouging, a little bit of gouging here in the inside wheel pad due to a blowout, and we've seen where a crack has developed right along it. See how straight this longitudinal crack is here. We're around station 2+40 right where I'm speaking. Looks like we've had our weakened plane joint formed in here, although the gouging where it hasn't cracked isn't all that visible. It's just enough of it maybe to result in the cracking. Something we saw very little of in sections where there is quite a bit of gouging over in Florida. Need to show something here. When we came up here to begin putting the markings down on the section, stopped too far up ahead, so consequently we've got the section number adjacent to the cross for station 1 as well as at the beginning of the test section. By the time we got back to it and found out the problem, the paint had dried out and it was almost impossible to remove. You can see where I scraped with the wire brush there on the 2 that I put there, and then painted a 1 over it, or over the 0 that is that I put there. And we've gone so far as to mark the location of our core, which we've got an X through right here. Between station 0 and station 1 there's very little cracking. It's interesting to look at the cross sections of this and determine just what kind of fill height we have and how it changes, because there may be a correlation, at least on in this particular test section, between the amount of fill and the amount of cracking. Whether or not there's a relationship, I don't know, but they do seem to correlate, because the cracking is much more severe as we get into the greater amounts of fill.